CNN host Don Lemon is under fire once again for accusations of a history of alleged misogyny, this time with a new expose from Variety. Sources told the outlet that Lemon displayed a pattern of hostile behavior toward his female coworkers, even going as far as threatening one in 2008, which is back a long while, but there it is.
A spokesperson for Lemon has denied the new report, calling it patently false. Here with us to discuss is Sabrina Salvati, host of the Sabby podcast and co-host of Revolutionary Blackout Network podcast as well. Thank you so much for being with us, Sabrina. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on.
So, Sabrina, what can you tell us about this situation with Don Lemon? Because we've been hearing a lot of different things. There's been a lot of chatter about him not getting along with his female coworkers right now since he's been moved into a new spot from his old primetime spot to a morning show. What can you tell us about this whole situation?
I think that Don Lemon has had a history of inappropriate behavior at work in reference to this particular situation with a history of misogyny towards his female coworkers. There was also the incident in reference to Nikki Haley where he said that she was not in her prime, so to speak, which was really interesting because when we look at someone like Kamala Harris and Hillary Clinton, both of them also ran for president and they are older than Nikki Haley. So I think this shows a type of partisan politics divide that we see between networks like CNN and Fox News, where there is this tendency to play to the Democratic Party audience, and that's what CNN chooses to represent. So I think a big part of the problem that we see with Don Lemon, though, it's not just about these claims about misogyny. There has also been incidents of unethical journalism. If we go back to the Jussie Smollett case, it was actually Don Lemon who was the one who contacted Jussie Smollett to warn him, so to speak, that the Chicago PD did not believe his story. That's not ethical journalism. But it seems as though there was no accountability for that behavior either. So we really need to start asking ourselves, what is going on at CNN? What is the management doing? Why has Don Lemon not been held accountable? And why did it take this incident with Nikki Haley for them to finally say he needs to have some type of training, so to speak? I honestly say that if it were Tucker Carlson who made those comments about a woman not being in her prime, I think a lot of liberals would be really irate. So there seems to be a bit of inconsistency when we talk about who we're going to hold accountable, depending on what party they're a part of at that time.
I actually didn't know that detail about his involvement in the Jussie Smollett incident. That is fascinating. Yeah, I've criticized him, right? Because it's not just, how he treats really his co-hosts. I think he's not treated particularly well, not just on the whole, past her prime remark, but there was an incident where he was, where Kaylin Collins, one of the co-hosts, was interviewing, I believe it was Representative James Comer, about the efforts to hold various federal agencies accountable. And then it cuts, she's remote with the guest, and then it cuts back to Don Lemon, and he tried to sort of impugn the entire, can you believe we've gotten to this place where we're interviewing Republicans, saying things I disagree with? And it was such a weird, he was undercutting her, but he was undercutting the idea of the network doing journalism at all. It's so weird.
Yeah, well, I think this is part of the problem that we have gone past the age of the Walter Cronkite style of journalism, so to speak. Now it's more about infotainment. That's what Rachel Maddow described it as when she was asked about talking about Russiagate. She said, well, technically, I'm not news, I'm infotainment. Mm-hmm. So this is a big part of the problem. It seems like to me, Don Lemon doesn't want to have conversations with people that he disagrees with. But I also really believe that Don Lemon knows that CNN would receive a lot of backlash if they were to remove him or try to hold him accountable. And we can point to a network like MSNBC, for example. Look at the backlash that they received when they removed Tiffany Cross. So I think that CNN wants to be very careful because they know if they were to remove Don Lemon, there would be backlash from their liberal audience. And they can use two claims. They could say, how dare you remove a black journalist? And they can also say, how dare you remove a black journalist who's a member of the LGBTQ community? So Don Lemon knows that he does have those two identity factors that work in his favor.
So, well, when Tiffany Cross was removed, I mean, there was a ripple of backlash from African Americans, but it certainly didn't bring her back, and she's still not on the air. My question is kind of something that you kind of talked about and alluded to, and that is about his claim to be a journalist. Is Don Lemon a journalist? And, should he be held to the same journalistic standard as hardcore journalists? I think, even my friend Tucker Carlson would tell you that he's not a journalist. He's kind of an information entertainer. Same with Sean Hannity, same with some of the people on MSNBC you cited, Rachel Maddow. So can he certainly make the argument that he can make the call to Jussie Smollett because he's not a journalist. He's not held to those same standards.
He could try to do that, but at the same time, CNN is a news network, and he is an employee at that news network, and he does have a responsibility to the American people to give them the facts. And it's not just him. That network in its entirety, they have had numerous claims where they have done this before, where they have said information on air and it turned out to not be completely true. And a lot of times they don't come back and try to, retract those statements either. So I totally get where you're coming from. But at the same time, like if you are on a news show and you are a part of a news network, you are supposed to give people the news. So I think we need to ask ourselves, where is journalism this day and age, and who and what are considered real news, so to speak? And if they're not considered real news, then maybe they shouldn't be called a news network.
Well, and something Fox does that its rivals do not do, as far as I can tell, is Fox draws a clearer line between which of its hosts are opinion people and which are news people. Like Bret Baier is a news person, so he's going to be held to the kind of, from a newspaper standpoint, right? The news page, the op-ed page, they're different things are allowed. There are different standards, and Fox says, right? Yeah, Tucker Carlson is a commentator. Sean Hannity is a commentator. Bret Baier is a news host. A lot of the people during the day, news hosts. CNN actually and MSNBC, I don't really make that distinction in the same way. Then you have someone like a Don Lemon who is like ostensibly right in a news role on a news network, but is also playing by kind of like opinion and commentary rules. Anyway, the whole situation does not seem to devolve to CNN's benefit because their ratings are still terrible. They haven't been able to reverse any of those. Fewer and fewer people are watching. They lose out to Fox and a host of other programs every night. So, why don't they change course?
I think they tried to change course in the sense they did have new management come in, and I think that was in an effort to help the ratings, so to speak, but it doesn't seem to be helping at all. But I think a big part of the fact is their message is very clear to people that we can see as an audience that there is a bias when it comes to CNN. There's a bias when it comes to Fox News as well, but I think the difference is CNN tries to pretend like it's not. When you see news networks like CNN or MSNBC cut from speeches that they don't think is a narrative that they want their audience to hear, that's not ethical journalism. When you see these networks only interview certain people and keep their audience basically barred from another type of narrative, that's not ethical journalism. And I think it goes further than this. It's not just about talking about someone like Nikki Haley, who is running for president. It also goes into this issue of Russia and Ukraine. Look at the people that they bring onto the network to talk about this war. They do not bring on people who are anti-war voices. They bring on people that fit the narrative that CNN wants to push. And so I think more Americans are starting to see how biased some of these mainstream media networks are, and people are starting to tune into other outlets, which is independent media, so to speak.
Sabrina, thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.